So I focus on adolescent identity development and the various factors that influence how adolescents come to see themselves in relation to other people and society and their place in society. For instance, their close peer relationships, their parent relationships, teacher relationships, and also what they do with digital media. So that's my relationship to the digital media and learning field, is this connection of how are adolescents using digital media and what impact is that having on their interpersonal relationships and their sense of identity. I think there's a lot of panic around it, and so what I'm hoping to do in my research is to gather enough data about what kids are actually doing and what they're getting out of it, and is there really any cause to be as panicked as a lot of the mainstream media sort of makes it out to be. In my dissertation research so far, it really seems that most kids seem to be getting a lot out of their digital media use in terms of their interpersonal relationships and just an opportunity to really express themselves. And there's very little real drastic identity exploration going on with most adolescents. It's certainly not the way a lot of media portray kids' digital media used to be. And so it's, most kids seem to be doing just fine and getting a lot out of what they're doing. And then there are some kids whose use may be more problematic. And so that's sort of what I've found so far. Well, I was a teacher before I was a graduate student. I taught fourth grade, so it wasn't adolescence, but I was always interested in children's development and their development of relationships and their sense of self. And when I first came to the Graduate School of Education at Harvard, I started working with Howard Gardner, and he was just starting a MacArthur-funded project called the Good Play Project, which explores the ethical dimensions of young people's digital media use. And one ethical dimension that we were focusing on was adolescent identity and the ethical implications of expressing yourself online. And I became very interested in that topic, particularly because identity development is such an important developmental task of adolescence. And it's really interesting, I think, to think about how is that process being influenced by these new technologies that kids have at their disposal that we didn't when we were young. So that's really how I started to get into it. And throughout my doctorate, I've been working with Howard on the Good Play Project and a related project called the Developing Minds and Digital Media Project, which really looks at the intersection between kids' social cognitive development and their digital media use. And we are trying to figure out how are kids today different from kids 20 years ago. Well, one thing I really want to do, and I think we do a good job at Project Zero, which is the research hub that I work at Harvard, is really connecting our research to what's going on in schools. And so, having been a teacher myself, everything I do in terms of my research, I hope for it to be useful to teachers in what they do with kids on a day-to-day basis. So with my dissertation research, I've given a few talks to the schools where I collected data, just showing them the data and listening to their responses and their concerns, their hopes around kids' digital media use. And so I really hope to use my research to engage teachers in exploring both the promises and the perils of kids' digital media use, but with a rich sense of what they're actually doing and what they're actually getting out of it. I think so many great things happened this week. One tremendous outcome of this week, I think, is we really, I think, built a sense of community and collective identity as digital media and learning scholars, sort of rising digital media and learning scholars. And I think that we will really continue our connections that we started here and use each other to improve our work, because each person here had a very different set of skills and knowledge base and theories that they were familiar with and were using in their work, and research that they knew. And so we've all sort of learned from that, but we all came with this sort of similar commitment to really leveraging the possibilities of digital media for kids' education. Well, I think, I don't know that it's a particular conversation or event, but it's a general sense that I am taking away from this week, is a wonderful sense of possibility about what I can do in my own career, but also how the impact I can have on education. And it's terrific. And if you had asked me in the middle of the week, I wouldn't have had that same feeling, because in the middle of the week things felt destabilized, because all this new information was coming at me. I was getting feedback on my writing, and everything was a little bit up in the air. And now I've sort of figured out how to deal with it, and now I feel that I've got some great tools, some great connections to really go back and make a difference. So my first item on my agenda is to graduate, and I am going to be graduating in November with my doctorate, and I'm continuing to work on the Good Play Project and now the Good Participation Project, which explores kids' civic engagement online. And what I would really hope to do is, well, I guess in the sort of the next year, I would like to continue writing about my work and getting it out there, both in scholarly publications, but I think that's another thing that I got out of this week, is there's so many venues that I could get my work out so that it can really be taken up. And so I would like to be able to communicate my research findings for my dissertation to educators and various outlets. So I'm going to really work on the distribution of my work this year. I think one of my colleagues at Project Zero forwarded me the call, and then I found it on my own just the next day, and it just automatically, I knew I wanted to do it, because I had been participating in the first 2 research associates meetings that MacArthur had sponsored, but they were much shorter, and they were wonderful opportunities to meet people and get a little taste of what other people were doing. But this week was a terrific opportunity to really become familiar with other people's work in a much deeper way, and get to know people and talk with mentors in a deep way and get their feedback on my work. And that was a tremendous opportunity. So I was hoping that that's what would happen, is to really get some feedback on my writing, to meet people, and that's what happened. And so I have, this weekend I want to start writing and making changes to my dissertation.